Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of EyeOnOshkosh. I'm your host, Cheryl Hentz. Very pleased to welcome back someone who's been here many times over the years. Our city manager in the city of Oshkosh, Mr. Mark Rohloff, is here. This is going to be his last show here. I don't know, unless some catastrophe happens. But for those of you who don't live in the city or maybe don't know, Mark has announced his retirement, and we're going to talk to him about that. And so, I don't know, maybe we'll have you on yet one more time, but we'll see. Anyway, thanks for being here.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I said this to you before we started rolling, and I'll say it now, we've always gotten along. I've had tough questions. You've had tough answers. You didn't like some of my questions. I couldn't stand some of your answers. But you know what? We have always maintained a great relationship. It's one that I cherish, and I always will. And I will miss you.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do this now. I can't do this.
Me neither. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we've had fun because I think we both care about the community, and that's what this is all about.
And we care about and respect each other.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And that, I think, really makes the difference. And so I truly am going to miss you, Mark. And not just being the head of the city, along with the council, but, being a guest on this show.
Yeah.
You've been on many times over the years, and you're like an old friend.
Well, like an old friend, you'll still see me around. I have
Good.
no intention of going anywhere. Love Oshkosh, and I always said toughest thing was talk my family into moving to Oshkosh. The next toughest thing would talk them into moving away from Oshkosh.
Yeah.
So we'll be here for the long term.
Well, that's wonderful. So what is your official date of retirement?
My official date of retirement is January 3rd, 2025. But I've got lots of vacation that I haven't taken, so I'll be done on December 20th. But I'll pray that a disaster doesn't happen, because technically I'll still be on call. So we'll see how that goes.
So January 3rd, but technically December 20th.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. I'll try not to bug you after that date. So where's the status of your successor then? Are they making any headway on that? Because it's going to creep up faster than we realize.
The council jumped on it right away, and they hired a recruiting firm. It's the firm it's associated with the firm that actually did the job when I was recruited and hired here.
Is that the one that Cheryl Hentz is part of?
No, that's a different firm.
A different firm.
This firm is now called MGT. It used to be called GovHR. It used to be called Voorhees and Associates when I was hired back in 2008. So the head of the firm, Voorhees, is still head of GovHR, but now it's a division of another firm. She's retiring as well.
Oh, boy.
And I've known Heidi for over 40 years. We competed for a job in Kansas City, Missouri in 1983. I have a great deal of respect for her, and her firm is still doing the recruitment.
Well, that's great. It's going to continue doing that even with her leaving.
Yep. And so a guy by the name of Lee Szymborski, a fellow city manager over the years, he's heading up the recruitment for the city. But it's kind of odd, because I've known Lee for years. I am out of this process.
Yeah.
It's like Lee came and interviewed all the council members individually, came and interviewed different department heads, and I didn't even see him the day he was here. So it's a little odd for me that I'm not. Usually I'm sticking my hands and stuff, and this one is not for me. This is for the council. This is, I don't want to minimize, their role, because their role is to select the next city manager, and that's right in their job description.
Mm-hmm.
So this is an exciting time, I think, for them, and. But it's an exciting time for me, but for other reasons. It's not about selecting my successor.
Yeah. So I know you're not really part of the process per se, but do you have a sense of where they're at in the process?
Oh, I can tell you generally how the process works, and then I have a pretty good idea, just because I'm hearing things from everybody else, and plus, since I'm in the profession, they've already started the advertising. That's already in the professional journals. And so I believe the deadline is later on this month. I don't know the exact date because I'm not applying. But it'll be later on this month. And I think the idea is to have somebody identified by around the 1st of December, because then that gives that person, because most city manager contracts are such that you need to give 45 to 60 days notice if you plan to leave. Some people try to give a little more. And I gave about a little over 8 weeks notice. So that's pretty much how that works. So I think the idea that is there would be like a 1 month gap between me and my successor.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And during that time, of course, we've got, I don't know, is it called assistant city manager or deputy city manager?
Yeah, John
Urban?
John Fitzpatrick.
Oh, that's right, John Fitzpatrick.
John Fitzpatrick has been my assistant. The code allows me to identify an assistant, and the purpose of that is so that there's a chain of command.
Sure.
If I'm unavailable or something like that, that Mr. Fitzpatrick does that. The council can select whoever they want to be interim city manager. I suspect it'll be Mr. Fitzpatrick because, he's been, I named him assistant city manager shortly after I arrived because he had been the interim prior to me coming on board. So, and I think the council respects him, and I expect that that's probably what they'll do.
Sure. All right. So, what are your plans for retirement before we get into the heady stuff of the show?
Yeah. Well, I'm probably going to be doing some consulting. I still have a lot of. I still got a lot of gas in the tank. I thought it was appropriate, given the entire organization and knowing succession planning being what it is. It's the right time for me to exit the organization, and it really is. There's certain positions I wanted to make sure were taken care of before I left. The most recent department head hire was our finance director, and I'm very happy that we've found somebody, and she's working out great. And then there'll be others in the future, but the finance directors are extremely hard to find these days, and I didn't want to burden my successor with that, so I took that one on. There are others that will happen in the near future. I think those are more very personal relationships, and I think that person should be able to select those people. So it's like I'm getting out at the right time for the organization, and that some people may think that sounds weird, but that really is when you're doing succession planning. It's about the entire organization, and I'm one of those, and so it's the right time for me to go. So I still got some things to do, a few years before I officially hang it up, but some little consulting things.
So what kind of consulting would you do?
Well, a combination of things it could be. I will tell you something I'm passionate about. I've been involved in the League of Wisconsin Municipalities on the board of directors for a number of years, and one of the things that I've recognized through my work there, and it's primarily for small cities. There's about 700 cities and villages in the state of Wisconsin. Half of them are population 1,300 or less.
Wow.
They're so small, they will never have somebody like a professional administrator. They can't afford it, and there's just not enough activity to go on to financially afford it or even justify it. But they still need good services. And so you may be familiar with CSAs. They're called Comprehensive Education Service Agencies. And that's technically a form of government. And the CSAs contract with school districts to provide services to the CSAs. And I've done, the league has done some research and trying to see, can we do a model like that? That's something I'm really interested in. And so I think you might find me snaking my way back in through many different levels of government, but I think I've always been an advocate for good, strong government at the local level, and small communities deserve great service, just like communities like Oshkosh.
Sure.
And so it's kind of going back to my roots because I was in a smaller city, but these communities need that type of assistance, whether it's human resources or financial, grant writing, things that we can do at this level in Oshkosh that can't be done elsewhere. It's something that I really feel strongly about. I've had plenty of friends as I've been on the League of Municipalities board, mayors and clerks from small cities, and they will lament about things that they can't do. Oh, you get to do that, Mark. You get to do that. It's like, I know they can't do it through an administrator, but can they get these services some other way? So I'm looking to try to figure out a way to adapt the CISA model to local governments.
Okay. Well, that sounds exciting.
Yeah.
I'm surprised, really, that it hasn't been done before, but look at your ingenuity there.
Yeah, well,
and your innovation.
Other states do things different ways, but we haven't done it here in Wisconsin, and I think it's something that we can do. So, yeah, just keep your eye out for me, LinkedIn profile or something. You may see me dabbling in something after the first of the year.
You may end up back here in a different capacity. One never knows.
You never know.
Well, again, I just want to thank you for all your years of service to the city. And, what are some of the highlights of your time here? Or if you don't want to look at it as highlights, what will be some of what you consider to be some of your greatest accomplishments since you've been here?
Well, I know a lot of people will. I've been asked that question a lot, and so I'm going to give you the real vague, non-quantitative answer, because I could talk about a project or this or that, and you can ask me about those too.
Sure.
Because I know I'm not going to get away with not answering that question.
Well, you're not going to get away with answering some of these other tougher questions
there you go.
either. So,
there you go. But I think it really starts with developing a culture. And I've said it, and you've seen it in our strategic plan. And I wrote can-do attitude, and the staff would often tease me about it. Can-do attitude, Mark. Yeah, and it's like, we can do this. And it's like, it might be something that we hadn't done before, but it's like, guys, we can do this. And when somebody asks us, can the city do this? Yeah, we can do these things. I think developing that can-do attitude has been a huge part of convincing the staff and the council that we don't have to be second best. We can do the best thing possible. I think there were people when I first got here with all the flooding. It kind of gave everybody just a little down in the dumps feeling. Mm-hmm. We can't get anything done. And I said, well, why do you think that? And it's like, and I all these corny lines that I use with staff over the years, like, yeah, eat an elephant one bite at a time, folks. So let's just, how do we start? You start with one bite, or I'll use Mahatma Gandhi's better. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step.
There you go.
You probably like that one a little better.
I like that one better.
For our vegetarian friends, that'll be good.
Eating an elephant.
Yeah,
I like that one better.
But
we'll go with Mahatma Gandhi.
It can't be. It's going to be something big, but you got to start with certain steps. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of. I can talk about stormwater, and it was like, we can't get these done, and it was like the staff would propose a project, the council would reject it for a reason, and then they'd bring another project. And so I said, stop. Why'd they say no to this one? Let's break it down. And I use a football analogy. Let's break down the game film. And let's go to the council. We've got this wonderful Oshkosh media. We got years of tapes. Let's go to the game tape. What happened? And it was like, they didn't just say no. Why did they say no? So we'd go through it. It's like, so this is the issue. Yeah. So let's focus on the issue that they didn't like. And eventually we got progress, and they approved a project. And it was like, it worked. Okay, now we do the next one. Now we do the next one. It's the single step that you take.
Totally makes sense.
And it once you get one of those steps, you have confidence built. The council has confidence in you, and then you can start making progress. And setbacks, to be sure, every time we had subsequent rainstorms, we had one in 2010, 2012, 2015. We had them.
Which was the one that was like the 500 storm? Was that in 2010?
That was 2008.
That was 2008.
Literally,
okay.
It was the week I was offered the job.
Boy,
and I'm watching television at home, and it's like, oh my gosh, what did I just accept?
Yeah.
And how we responded from an emergency standpoint, I thought we did a very good job. but it was like, we can't be responding like this. And when you think about everything that's just been going on with Hurricane Helene, you think of Asheville, North Carolina, an incredibly wonderful city. It can happen to any of us. What do you do to make sure that you prevent it from happening as much as possible, and when it does happen, that you're prepared?
Yeah.
And it's really both of those things. So we've done a number of stormwater ponds, and you and other people have talked to me about stormwater rates are so high, and they are, but they're, relatively speaking, I think you're getting good value for your money. I gladly pay that stormwater bill because my basement flooded a couple times too, and I would much rather pay that stormwater bill than replace the, I got a partially finished basement. I don't have to finish the drywall in my basement every time there's a flood. One time it got so bad I had to replace all of the drywall. I think of everybody else who have their washers and their hot water heaters that got flooded and ruined. And it's like, those are things that affect everybody's daily lives.
Yeah.
And we just had to stop that. So
yeah. Well, I think we've done a good job. Would you equate the stormwater situation and the need to put in all those ponds? And refresh my memory, are they retention or detention?
They are primarily detention ponds.
Okay, all right. I can never remember that. And I don't know why I care, but I do.
Detention, D for dry. That's always yeah, so
good.
And R, retention, R for rain. So there's rain, when they're full, they're retention pond, or when they're typically always full, they're retention ponds. The purpose of those is to get the solids in the stormwater to fall out so that clean water goes out.
Sure.
When it's a detention pond, you're just detaining the water for a little bit so the downstream has time to flow, and then you slowly put it back.
Totally makes sense. So would you equate some of those big storms and all of the ponds that we had to put in, and replacing the big water pipes under the road that are this small with something that's this big, that kind of thing? I'm talking comparatively speaking here, not literally like this. But would you compare those with some of your biggest challenges since you've been here? Or has there been something else that has really been a challenge for you to kind of gnaw your way through and eventually overcome?
Well, some of these things, no, that's not the hardest one. Scientists who know their stuff, engineers who know their stuff, can fix these things. It takes money, and it takes education, and I think we did a good job of educating people. And not everybody's always paying attention. Not everybody's you, Cheryl, that they're watching and asking questions. And then when you get an answer, you go, thank you for the answer, move on to the next topic. So a lot of people have no history of Oshkosh. We have, a lot of people who've only lived here for 10 years.
Right.
They have no knowledge of the 2008 storm.
Yeah.
Sadly, I talked to younger employees, and they were little toddlers in 2008. They have no knowledge, and they lived in Oshkosh.
Yeah.
You got to remind people about those things. I remember very distinctly when those storms took place. I know which ones took place before I got here, and the ones after, because you know what lessons you learn from those things.
Sure.
So no, that's not it. I would say that the tougher challenges have been things that don't have a cut and dry solution. And I think social issues. I mean, when we dealt with the aftermath of the George Floyd murder in Minneapolis, and it's like, how do we address racism in our community? That's not an answer. Oh, I've got an easy answer, and here it is in this page of this book. That's a very tough issue. Homelessness has been on the rise. I will continue to disagree with people respectfully that somehow the day-by-day shelter caused homelessness. I completely reject that premise. All you have to do is take a look at our neighbors, our neighboring communities. Homelessness is an issue that we struggle with nationwide. Some places harder than others. I think the weather, is one factor that we don't have homelessness as severe as you do in places with nicer weather, because that gravitates people. But there's still a lot of belief that, well, if we didn't build the day-by-day shelter, that wouldn't have happened. Well, number one, the city didn't build the day-by-day shelter. The community built the day-by-day shelter with donations and a lot of heart. I take responsibility for supporting the land sale to day by day, and I still support that. Some people said it's right across from the Leach Amphitheater, and yes, that's true. But there's a lot of other things that are close to the Leach Amphitheater, and they do well.
Yeah.
Well, housing next to a railroad track, for example, wasn't exactly on the top of the list for people for housing needs.
Yeah.
So locating it near a railroad track was not necessarily a bad thing. It needed to be closer to downtown.
Yeah.
And so we did that. So those are the tough ones, because there's no easy answer.
Right. And if there was, everybody across the country would be doing it.
And if everybody, and I'm going to just joke a little bit. If I was able to figure that out, I wouldn't be doing consulting on something else. I'd be solving homelessness issues. I wish I could.
Yeah.
But it's a community. So go ahead and ask, because I could talk all day.
So the fact that some people are saying that day by day caused homelessness, I would agree that that's kind of a ridiculous statement. All that's saying is we can see them now. It's kind of like when Ronald Reagan, many years ago, disputed the fact that there was, homelessness out there. Well, okay, just because they're not parked outside the gates of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue does not mean that they do not exist. It's the out of sight, out of mind thing. And so, yeah, I agree that day by day did not cause it. I mean, we would be, I think, in a lot worse shape were it not for day by day.
Right. And I think other things, bringing cots into the community is transitional housing. One of the things we recently did with day by day, as part of our American Rescue Plan Act, we gave them a grant to help them assist their guests if the only thing between them and secure housing is a deposit on an apartment. It's like, and that deposit might be upwards of $2,000 or something like that. It's not cheap. My kids, they get their first apartment, they can go to the bank of dad and mom and get that money. Not everybody has that luxury.
Right. Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because this...
Well, no, let me finish.
Okay, go ahead.
So we gave them some funds.
How much?
It's over $100,000.
Okay.
But the idea is, if somebody needs a deposit, and that's what'll get them out. I mean, they've got a job. There are many people at day by day that have a job already. If we can help them just put down a deposit, and that gets them out of homelessness, I'll do that all day long.
Sure.
Because it's like, I just need a little help. And day by day does things like that to help. But they're busy running a shelter, visit services to get them out of it.
Sure.
And it's like that creates another bed opening at day by day. So like I said, I'll do that all day long.
Yeah. So one thing that just came up this week, just a couple nights, as a matter of fact, ago, was a police officer from the city of Oshkosh PD told someone who I know through someone else. So it may have gotten a little bit misconstrued along the way. We know how that game of telephone goes. But the upshot of the story was, because Oshkosh got a bunch of money for homeless people, all these other communities are sending homeless people here. I kind of reject that nonsense, because, I mean, every community could have gotten some ARPA money. So I don't understand why they are thinking that.
Well, I think it's an easy discussion point, and then you can say it's not us.
Is there any truth to it, though?
I don't believe it's as drastic as people say. I would say if there is an issue, I would put that at less than 10%.
Okay.
Day by day will tell you most of these people come from Winnebago County. So there might be some folks that come in from some of the other communities, but they also, the homeless people are not forced to go anywhere. They choose to go to different places.
Sure.
Appleton's facing the same issue. So is Fond du Lac. So I think they're going wherever. If there's a shelter anywhere nearby, they might gravitate to that. But I'm only aware of one instance where essentially a homeless person was dumped in Oshkosh. I was not happy about it, and I called the community and said, "How dare you do this?" And I said, "You're treating that person like a piece of trash, and you just dumped them in Oshkosh. Where's your conscience?" Mm-hmm. So I called him on it, and Chief Smith.
What
and
city
I
was that? Come on.
It was the city of Wautoma.
Ha. Okay.
So, and I know the administrator there, and I was very disappointed. And he said he was going to leave, and it's like, he's still here.
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't happen that often. And I hate to use that example because that person, they were dumped here.
Yeah. But here's the other part of this, why I don't believe that if this officer in fact said this, I don't believe that it's true, because every community had the chance to get ARPA money, American Rescue Plan Act funds, which is a federal thing started as a result of COVID, right? It came about because of COVID. So every community, every county can apply.
They did get money.
Yes.
They didn't apply. They got it.
Without even applying.
They got
Really?
it. They were,
Okay.
Some had to get it through the state. The smaller communities got it through the state. The larger communities were just cut a check.
Yeah.
So we didn't have to apply.
Right.
We have to.
But the point is, everybody had the opportunity to get some money by one means or another, and so therefore, there should be no, City of Oshkosh got a bunch of money, so we're just going to shoot these people all down there. That's ridiculous.
And we didn't even use our ARPA money towards the construction of the building, because the county through the state was able to do that. So we ended up not having to put anything into that. The only thing we gave them was about $150,000 to acquire the land. That was it. Mm-hmm. And then we subsequently did the grant for the thing I told you about to assist them with relocating people. So total $350,000 and only $150,000 towards the actual project of building the shelter.
Okay.
The community did it, and I give a lot of credit to Winnebago County, but the community did it. But the causes, they've gotten worse. It's worse everywhere, and it's mental health issues. It's substance abuse issues.
Sure.
But
it's a combination of everything.
It's a combination.
And it's been going on for years, and it's only going to get worse until we can get something done about affordable housing, which I want to talk about that in a moment. But a couple of things that sort of sprung to mind as you were talking about some of this stuff. When we were talking about water, I read somewhere recently where the city, I think it's just in certain parts of the city, but correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you will, but there have been a lot of people saying they've got a weird smell in their homes, and it's been traced back to water in some senses. What's that all about? Can you briefly tell us?
The short answer is no, I can't.
Okay.
But we have to take those reports very seriously, because you may recall, and not everybody may recall, but I know you'll recall, in the 90s, Winneconne had an explosion because of methane gas in their sewer.
Yes.
And that was not caused by the city, but because sewer pipes attract, there's like a channel that goes even around the pipe itself. It's usually like gravel and stone to protect the pipe. And gases can get attracted to those and become basically a conduit for gas. And if it gets built up, that can be dangerous. So we have to take those things seriously. We don't have any idea what the cause of it is. To be honest, though, Cheryl, there's a lot of, well, I heard this, I heard that. And when you get arguments that, oh, I smelled it here, I smelled it there, and it's not consistent, that doesn't help us. because what we're trying to do is kind of through the process of elimination,
Right.
break it down. There did appear to be some odor that was going on in the 7th, 8th Avenue area, just immediately south of the river.
Okay.
And that did get us quite concerned because a lot of people don't know this. The largest sewer pipe in the entire city goes along 8th Avenue.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm one who didn't know that.
Well, and that's why I'm on the show. And I actually said this at the last council meeting because the council's like, we're getting these questions. So, and I'll explain that. Is that the answer? I don't know. But down Bowen, and then it crosses over near Broad Street, the northeast side of the city, the entire northeast side of the city, the sewage comes under the river and comes out over at 8th Avenue, goes west on 8th, and then back towards the sewer treatment plant. That's just how the system was built. And then everything on the south side of the city, sort of the southwest side of the city, it all comes down Oregon Street. And then those two meet up at 8th, and they meander their way back to the sewer treatment plant, which is over immediately south of the river near Titan Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have that much sewage, hydrogen sulfide is a natural gas that occurs from sewage. That's just a scientific fact. So, and then the other one that you always worry about, it's not that we cause it, but if there was a gas leak somewhere in town, it might find its way to our sewer pipe. And it gets into the gravel, and then just, it's a gas. It can go anywhere it wants to.
Yeah.
That's a real issue. So we have a device called the 4-gas detector, and it detects hydrogen sulfide, methane, carbon dioxide, because even though, that's not good for us to necessarily breathe in a lot of, but we get a lot of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and then oxygen itself to make sure that the good stuff is also measured, because when it's not good. So we haven't found any of the 4 gases at a concerning level. So we keep looking.
That is a good thing.
And it's all we can do. But I can't dismiss it.
Right.
I can have some good jokes about sewer gas and things like that, like a sophomore. But the reality is I dismiss it at my peril.
Okay.
So we are taking it seriously. But when somebody says, well, I smelled it at Menards and I smelled it here, it's like, help us help you.
And what is it that they're smelling? What kind of smell is it?
It's
has
hard
anyone
for people
said?
to describe. I heard that Slade's bar had a smell, and so it's like, okay, I'd like to help you, but we had our folks go there, and before it got on TV, we'd been looking at it for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But in the past week, it seems to have died down. I'm not saying the gas is gone or the smell is gone. It's just that we haven't been able to pinpoint it. So I'm going to tell people, please keep calling us, because I don't want to dismiss these theories that I don't believe are correct, but I can't ignore them either. So we're going to keep doing this until we, it's been really dry. That can create cracks in the soil.
Sure.
It could be anything. We reached out to some of our industrial folks if they've changed a process in their treatment, because many businesses, industries are required to do pre-treatment before they give it to us. If they change their pre-treatment, that could be it. So we've asked some of them, would you mind stop doing this and do something else instead? One business actually just changed their pre-treatment process. So those are all the things we look at, because we can't dismiss it. But it's a really interesting scientific project.
Okay. I want to talk about revaluations. Now, you knew this was coming.
I knew this was coming.
I got to refer to my notes here because this is so major. So there was a big article in the Oshkosh Herald last week as we taped this. It was recently in the Oshkosh Herald, referencing that there were discrepancies between all of the commercial properties in the city and the state agency's compliance rules, and that is going to force another revaluation, not just of all the commercial properties, but of the residential properties. Now, here's my first question, and I got a lot to get to, so I'm hoping that we can just kind of zip through some of these answers, not in a snide sort of way, but let's talk about it. But I want to make sure we have time to get to these things. So why, if it's a discrepancy between state compliance things and commercial properties, why do all the residential properties have to be revaluated?
The short answer is state law.
But they've already been done. They were just done, Mark.
We are required by state law to assess all the properties. So we did that. We have a commercial company do the commercial. We have a private company do the commercial.
Right, out of Texas.
And our own staff. No, they're based locally. I mean, they're based in Wisconsin.
But their home base is Texas, is what I read.
I guess Tyler Technologies is, but it's a local firm that got bought out by that. I mean, they've been doing this for years.
Yeah.
And we have our own staff that does the residential. So the state law says that the state reviews this on a more macro level. They take a look at, not specific sites or anything, because each individual property is assessed at the local level. And they determined that their what's called equalized value, or their estimate of fair market value, was, or I should say, what we did assessing wise with the commercial property was lower than their macro analysis of commercial. But the state law states specifically that if one class of property is out, then all classes of property need to be revalued. And here's why. We're required to be within 10% of full value, either 10% under or 10% over. We waited until COVID was over to do the reval because we knew the market was going to get weird, and we didn't want to revalue it, and then weird things happen in the market, and then we have to revalue again. So we, back in 2021, told the council, we're targeting 2024, and here's why, and the council accepted that. And I still don't have any regrets over that.
Right.
So when the commercial, so we were out of compliance, and the state notified us, and that has to get fixed. Because the commercial's out, we're still out of compliance, and therefore we have to do a complete revaluation.
Okay.
How we do it, though, we're working with the state on. For commercial, we're going to redo the complete process.
Are we going to get charged again by Tyler Technologies or whoever their subcontractor is?
We are no longer contracting with Tyler Technologies.
All right. Are we going to have to pay someone else?
Yes, we are.
At what cost?
$285,000. And that's why you don't
That
want to...
is more. We paid $164,000 to Tyler Technologies for the commercial value revaluations that were just done, according to the Herald.
I don't know if that was, and I'm not disputing you, I don't know if that was, we pay them also for maintenance of our commercial assessment.
Well, either way, that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, but they complied, and the state did not dispute that they did it wrong. They didn't say they did it wrong. They complied with the statutes, and they gave their analysis. The state just said, we still don't think it reached full value, so you've got to redo it.
Well, then why doesn't the state come in with some funds to help pay this? Where are we supposed to come up with an extra $284,000?
Well, that goes back to the whole point of, somebody said, well, we should just revalue every 3 years. At this cost, the cost is going up. Finding assessors is extremely difficult. I mean, how many kid did you talk to in high school say, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be an assessor. It's really difficult.
I get it.
And we have lost so many people through retirements and things like that. And so is Tyler. I mean, up until this point, we were satisfied with Tyler's work. Obviously, we're dissatisfied because in a perfect world, they would have done it right. I would also argue that the state has a challenge because the state is short of assessors. And so I think everybody is doing the best job they can, but they're cutting corners. And I think it's a little bit of state and a little bit of Tyler, but we end up holding the bag.
Yeah.
They didn't do anything wrong legally. We've looked at our recourse, and all we can do is essentially fire them. So we fired them.
Yeah, and pony up more money to somebody else.
Yep. But
And-
that's the other firm. You can't blame the other firm.
Well,
and the
no, but
price
if
has
the
gone
state
up.
if the state, Mark, is saying we don't like these numbers, basically, we don't like these values, then let them pony up the money to have it redone. I mean, really, seriously, why? You know, this is what I have a problem with government mandates. They mandate crap and they don't give you any money for it. They're unfunded mandates.
I'll give you a different take, but I think you'll agree with me.
Yeah,
now,
because I want to
you're
go on to
frustrated.
something else here.
You know, and I've said this for years, and people have dismissed it. I think assessing should be done at the county or the state level, not for me to unload it. There are other states where what I just said, that it's done at the county or the state level. It's not always done at the municipal level because there's so many inconsistencies around the state, and there are many towns in the state that don't want to do revals, and the Department of Revenue doesn't chase them down as aggressively as they do the larger cities.
Well, I think I'll come out of my semi-retirement and become an assessor because with $284,000 there and $164,000 or possibly more there, well, that's a nice chunk of change. Okay, so revaluations. In the city, most properties on average went up, I believe, 70 or 75%. And so if they're all going to get revalued again, what is going to happen to those first numbers that everybody got? Are they going to be just thrown out and the new ones put into place and used? Or what's going to happen to, because we all got it. I mean, I got my little green sheet in the mail with the numbers for me. What's going to happen to those numbers that were sent out?
For 2020, they will be used for 2024.
Okay.
They're required to be used.
Okay.
We've asked the state, the council asked, well, can't we just go back to the old numbers? And the state was like, I'm paraphrasing the state, but the state said those values were even worse. We were down at 70% of full value.
Well, right, because some people's homes had never been revalued in years and years. So I get it. But explain this for me, Mark, because I pulled this definition off of the internet. Okay? It says a revaluation is a process that cities use to update the value of all properties within their boundaries to ensure that property taxes are fair and equitable. So there's the definition. Would you agree with that definition?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so then why is it that we keep getting told that these revaluations have nothing to do with our property taxes? I'm confused by that.
Well, no, but then that's in there that says to create a method to go back and repeat it, because that's a good definition.
To ensure that property taxes are fair and equitable.
Right.
Right. I'm not complaining about that. What I'm saying is we keep hearing from you and others that these revaluations aren't going to affect our taxes at all. Well, that's not necessarily true. And if it is true, then explain to us how it can be. Because I don't understand it, and a lot of people
A lot
don't.
of people took a lot of things out of context. What we said was an increase in value does not necessarily mean an increase in taxes. Mm-hmm. It comes down to the averages. And this is where the bulk of the shift is to residential.
Okay.
The average increase for residential was 70%. The average increase for commercial was 30%, mm-hmm. and the overall average was 50%. So I'm oversimplifying.
Yeah.
If your value went up more than 50%, you're likely going to see an increase. But if your value only went up 49%, and
yeah, I know you're
technically, if there's no increase in property taxes, you might see a decrease. I can tell you that the commercial properties who only went up 30%, they're going to see a decrease. But it depends on where you fall on which side of the average.
I got to go back home and look at mine.
Okay.
I know. I know.
There's a very small percent of residential that went up less than 50%. Okay. So most residential, and the council members asked us, and we said, like 1% is under 50%.
And the rest of us will probably see some kind of an increase.
Right. It's what it is. It's a reshifting of the property tax pie.
Got it.
So next year, if the commercial is not as high as it should have been, the commercial will go up, and then it'll swing a little bit more towards commercial.
Okay.
But again, the same thing. What's the average? Are you higher than average or lower than average?
Right. All right, so I want to move on to affordable housing because our time is ticking away here. We've kicked this around a lot over the years, and as we both know, the problem is worse, not better. One thing that I have talked about, and I've discussed this with Representative Lori Palmieri when she was on the show, I've talked about it privately with lawmakers, and it doesn't seem to be getting any traction. And I recently found out that this can be done, and here's what I've been saying. When a developer comes in to develop a multi-unit or multi-family property, an apartment complex, a municipality or a city, whatever the entity is, they can, I've been told by a city who has done this on the western side of the state, they can require that a portion of those units be set aside for people with low to moderate income. And it can be done even if the property is not in a TIF district or getting TIF money to develop it. So if that can be done, why has the city not yet done that? And you're leaving, and I don't know who's going to take your place, but you know, I can assure you that when they come to town and they get hired, I'm going to be asking them to take a pledge to make sure that this is done when developers want to continue to put up these big projects.
Yeah.
Why have we not done it?
I don't know if that's necessarily true. I have not.
Well, I can tell you off camera what the city is that did it.
Well, you made me tell you what Toma, so come on, give it up. It's public record.
I would have to look it up because I just did a story on it. It's on the western part of the state. I believe it's River Falls.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's River Falls.
Now, I happen to know somebody that works in River Falls. I can check that out really quick.
Yep.
He happens to have the last name of Rohloff, so I'd be happy to check that out.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, it is. Oh, that he happens to be my son. So yeah. So I.
Well, as I said, I think it's River Falls. I'm pretty sure it is.
Well, I'll find out real quick. I'll be texting after we're done here.
Yeah.
So.
But they've done it. Whatever the city is, they've done it.
Yeah.
With a project that's just being built now.
The questions more come up with TIF, tax increment financing, because then we are contractually entering into.
Right.
You know, prior to the last couple of years, even though there's arguments for affordable housing, our market rents are comparable to what's considered affordable housing. The question is what's your definition of affordable housing?
Therein lies the rub.
Yeah, because you'll hear a term these days that I think is overused and it means absolutely nothing. Workforce housing.
It's a buzzword.
It's a buzzword. That's all it is.
Right.
There's no definition. So there are some real definitions. There's moderate income housing, which is intended to be for people who make 80% to 120% of the median income for the area. That's moderate income housing. Then there's low, very low, and extremely low. Low income is 70% of median income. 50% of median income is very low, and 30% is extremely low. 30% is also the standard that's used for the housing authority. So if you can use 30% of your income for housing, that's what the housing authority charges you. No more than 30% of your income. So that's how that works. But you can do it. But whenever we're dealing with TIF districts, it's like we're already charging market or below market rents. So if you want us to do more, then you need to give us more so that we can afford that income, because they run their pro formas, as they call it, on estimated income from rents, and they're like, we're already charging below market rents because this is the housing is less expensive here in Oshkosh. So that's the challenge that we have. And
Well, what they did over in this other city was, I believe, a 106 unit property. It was only 3 units that had to be low to moderate, or maybe even low, very low income. But 3 units is better than no units, and it gives housing to 3 more people or families or whatever the case may be. And I just think that and their person in their community development office told me that that the developer was all too happy to do it.
Then they got something for it. And there are other things that the city has nothing to do with that developers can take advantage of. And we've done that we've got a few developers in town who have been very successful in doing, they're called low-income tax credits. You'll hear the term LIHTC. And there's 2 different types. Yes.
I've not heard that one.
Low-income, LIHTC, low-income housing tax credits.
Okay.
And so if they agree to, they have to be eligible for these, they're called LIHTC. If they can get those, then they will have certain units set aside. Cabrini, St. Mary.
Oh, yeah.
Those are LIHTC projects. So a portion of those are in fact set aside for low-income individuals.
Good.
Some of the ones that are, I believe, the Smith School project has some of them. So those exist, but they don't. And I will say, the developers, I don't have any issues with developers, but developers love to take credit for something that somebody else helped fund.
Sure, of course.
And so you might be hearing they may have gotten some LIHTC credits.
Maybe.
And so.
But I guess the point is, Mark, either way, no matter how it came to be, they were able to require that this developer set aside something for people who obviously can't afford this market rate that we keep hearing about, because just like affordable housing, it's a relative term. Yeah. So anyway, but speaking of affordable housing, how's the Jefferson Street project coming? And are there any other projects like that in the works?
That is a very unique project, and it's wonderful. They're probably still a year away, because this is, to be able to do what they're doing takes a lot of doing, and I believe they're trying to get some of these tax credits or some other type of program that is done by the state. We've given them some funds through the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA. We thought that was a very good use of those funds.
Sure.
The fact that they're going to look at daycare that includes second shift daycare, extremely unique. So, and
very, very much needed.
Yeah. Oh, too. Absolutely. So, that is clear. So that's probably a year away. So I won't be back to tell you how it's doing. We'll have to just drive by.
We'll drive by. For folks who want to drive by, tell them where it is on Jefferson.
It's actually on Jefferson and Main Street, north of Irving, and it's I'm sorry, north of Parkway. Excuse me, between Parkway and Irving. Okay. Thank you. So it's just between Parkway and Irving, 600 block of Jefferson Street, and then part of that goes over to Main Street. On the Main Street side, there's going to be a little bit of commercial and some residential above it, but on the back side, it's going to be like townhome type of a rental. Yeah. So I'm very excited about that. There'll be a lot of low income units that are restricted there through another program.
How many units is it?
Oh, I think 60.
Okay, that's a good size.
I think, yeah.
One other thing, just real quickly, there's a new downtown plan being proposed, like expanding Opera House Square, but I don't understand to where they want to expand that. And then there's something else related to City Center, what's being considered there. Can you answer those 2 questions in about 3 minutes?
It was really a downtown visioning study. You might remember back in 2002, we did a downtown action plan, and we did a lot of those things. That's where the Leach Amphitheater came from, the Riverwalk. So we wanted a replacement vision for that. Mm-hmm. So these are not specific plans. They are ideas that came up
Just
through
ideas.
this process.
Okay.
So now I know there are people like, well, what's the next step to do those types of things? And it's like, well, a lot of it's property acquisition. In the case of City Center, we knew that that was going to be, a very controversial issue. So rather than just have one vision like Opera House Square you asked about, there were actually 3 different versions. It's like, look, here are different ideas that you can do. You can completely level City Center. You can just rehab what you have, or you can kind of sort of split the difference and say, well, maybe we do something where we open up a portion of City Center so there's greater access to the river. So those are basically the 3 different visions that were created.
Well, the parking structure, that ramp in City Center has been problematic for years.
And that's part of the issue. So the issue is, do they reinvest in that, or do they look for a way to rehab it? And and the third option was just knock it down and do something. It's privately owned, so I mean they'll decide what they're going to do with it eventually. But they're looking at those things. I know there were people that were worried. Oh, this coffee shop's going to have to move, and it's like, guys, just take
Cool
a breath.
your jets.
Take a breath.
Right.
Let's talk this through. Are we going to start acquiring properties to expand Opera House Square? No, we have to look at this and say, how do you do a project like this? The journey of 1,000 steps. It's like the first step is like, what do we have? Who's willing to pitch in money for this thing?
Yeah.
The Community Foundation has been an incredible partner. Are they going to be part of this? Who's going to be part of it? We don't have money growing on trees. We still have infrastructure to do. We still have other challenging things. How do you do all of these things? And so you may have to look to the philanthropic community. That's how Leach Amphitheater got built.
Yeah.
So it's.
But we no longer have a Phyllis Leach.
No.
But the organization is still there, I think, and still being run.
And their 100th anniversary is in 2028.
Well, they
and
could
I think
do
they.
something
I
at
think
that
they
point.
want to do something.
All right.
So let's just see.
Very good. All right, we are down to 2 minutes. So, what are your closing thoughts? What's the final message that you'd like to leave with the city of Oshkosh?
I think I said this early on in my tenure, and I'm going to say it again. This is a wonderful community. We have to maintain our optimism that we can get things done. I think we get ourselves too down in the dumps sometimes, and I didn't buy it then. I don't buy it now. We have to commit ourselves to making our community better and not worry about what the next door neighbor's doing. Just worry about making our community better.
But we can learn from what other people
we can absolutely learn, but we can't.
So we do have to look at them.
But you don't go home and tell your spouse, well, we're just a bad family because they've got a pool in the backyard.
No, I totally agree.
You can't bring yourself down because you don't have this or that. We are not as affluent a community as some other communities around us. That's a fact.
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean we can't do things right.
You play the cards you're dealt, and you do the best with what you have.
And I think we've done a pretty good job with the hand we've been dealt. And we just have to keep that optimism. So that's my final message for you.
Mark, it has always been a pleasure. Thank you so very much.
Welcome.
And have a wonderful retirement. We'll be in touch.
You got it.
All right, that's going to do it for us, folks. We will see you next time. I'd like to thank Mark once again and my crew and, of course, you. And we'll see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.